We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the Doomsday Podcast, and very exciting to have all these HBO and everybody wanting to be a part of the Doomsday Podcast these days. And joining me now from his other studio in Colorado, it is Ed Werder. In the aftermath, I've just hustled over from the ball game. You will hear interviews, exclusives, I like to call them. My visit with Rod Marinelli and also Jerry Jones. But right now, let me bring into the program Ed Werder in the aftermath of the Cowboys becoming the NFC East champions. Ed, are you wearing a Cowboys NFC East cap as we speak?
No, the mail doesn't get here quite that quickly. I'm sure you've overnighted me a little something. I'll probably get it with those razors I was supposed to get for Christmas last year.
It's called
that's
PayPal.
That's my expectation.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Anyway, so I think they do deserve a lot of credit. This is the first time in the history of the franchise that they've made the playoffs after a 3-5 start. And again, this continues this interesting trend in the NFC East that has had a different division champion every year since 2004. All of that being said, I still think there are major issues for this team, challenges in the near future that they're going to have to resolve, or they won't be in the playoffs for very long.
You heard it there. But today, I mean, let's just for a moment, Ed, as we get ready for the blessed Christmas holiday coming up, we think about the true meaning of Christmas. Let's just feel the joy of the Cowboys getting that NFC East title. I noticed you liked my tweet, Xavier Suafilo. That's a pretty good look he had in there, wasn't it, with the sunglasses and everything?
I thought you were referencing the tweet you had about that Dak Prescott and Jameis Winston were exchanging jerseys after the game, and it was wise of Jameis to do so while he still had one.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that one too, Ed. I don't know where Jameis will be next season, but as the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm not sure he's really long for that position. The former first-round pick and the former Heisman Trophy winner. Ed, so much to get to this. I know you're excited about some of these interviews I've done, and of course, Glenn Stretch-Smith. I know our listeners, and by the way, Ed, as I was walking around the press box today, remarkable how many folks kind of begin their week and are always asking me, when does the podcast come out? So, and that was even one of your ESPN colleagues who'd come into town to do the game. He was like, okay, guys, how's the Doomsday going? Always fun to hear that sort of enthusiasm. Ed, let's get to it. And I'm going to ask Mark Frito Friedman of Frito Nation Productions. Mark, please play the music. All right, it is time for the Doomsday Podcast. And Ed, some of the joy in our hearts today as the Cowboys celebrate the NFC East, and it is remarkable. And we'll get to some of the negatives, including
they're celebrating an unexpected birth of their own. Is that what you were going to say?
That's right. I don't think this was really a virgin birth, but it is a playoff birth.
I didn't say it was. I said unexpected.
Yes.
You're the one who had to go into the detail of it.
Yes. Well, you know how I was raised. I if you want to get spiritual here, I'm willing to do that. I
think we've done that for long enough.
The Cowboys get.
I like to still be snarky during the holiday season.
I know you do. Cowboys with a 27-20 win, and it was a big one, Ed, because they wrap up the NFC East. Was there that moment as we were kind of watching the Eagles seem to do their thing against the Texans, and then you had the Cowboys struggling a little bit, especially kind of early in that second half. It got to 17-13, and you just wondered, and the Cowboys, boy, they recovered a fumble early in that second half. Was it going through your mind that sort of snarky, sadistic guy that you are, the fact that the Cowboys might have to go to Giants land, go to the Meadowlands, and sort of a win or go home type game? Was there just a tiny?
They might have to carry those boxes of hats and T-shirts to the Great Northeast for yet another week. No, but I never got to that point of pessimism.
Yeah.
But I would say that my takeaway was, this was almost like the Cowboys created their own schedule and chose the woebegone Bucs as the opponent for their homecoming game. The Cowboys had no turnovers. They scored a defensive touchdown. They're at home, and yet they could barely escape a 5-9 team that seems poised to fire its head coach in about a week. They had really only one sustained offensive drive for a touchdown. That was Dak Prescott's run at the end of a 75-yard drive. They had the defensive touchdown that Jalen Smith scored. They got another touchdown off Randy Gregory recovering a fumble. And kind of the Bucs were who they are. I mean, they've had the most turnovers in the league. They came in with 34 or 32. They've had 34 now. Their turnover ratio is second to worst in the NFL at -22. So this is a bad team, and they barely beat them because – the Cowboys scoring 27 points, to put that into perspective, the Bucs are 1-7 on the road, and their defense has been totally non-competitive on the road. They've allowed, going into the game, 259 points. That's an average of 37 points a game that they allow on the road, and the Cowboys obviously scored 10 fewer than that, and 7 of those were on defense. So this offensive performance should cause a lot of anxiety among Cowboys fans.
Yeah, I think it will, and we've got some defense to get to, and you'll enjoy the one-on-one I had with Rod Marinelli and some of the back and forth that we had about this unit. And there's some, and let's reserve some time to talk about Randy Gregory. I saw you tweet about it. Let's get right to it. Actually, we'll get to the woebegone. I love that you make me think of like Garrison Keillor when you start using that kind of verbiage. But let's get right to it, and we'll get to this. We'll get to this offense. But the fact that on that one play you referenced, where the defense, where Jalen Smith raced back for the touchdown. How about that? Randy Gregory, much maligned, 2015 second-round pick, who, at times we wondered if he would ever really contribute to the Cowboys. And again, with a guy like that who's had substance abuse issues and anxiety, mental health issues, it is week to week. I guess in some ways we're all week to week, but especially with a guy like that. And then Jalen Smith, who look like, we gave him, a 50-50 shot at best of really ever getting close to 100%. And now he's become really, I think, probably deserves to be in the Pro Bowl and one of the better linebackers in the league. And after the strip sack, there he goes racing up the sideline. Ed, wasn't that interesting? And I think you noted that on Twitter, the fact that we've beat the Cowboys up. We've beaten them up a lot about their second-round picks and taking those sorts of risks. But with these two guys, it now appears, the way this thing's headed, that they are enormous parts of the Cowboys' defensive success.
Yeah, it was, the two of the biggest second-round gambles that Jerry Jones has ever taken. He endured a lot of criticism and ridicule about Jalen Smith and whether he'd be able to overcome that torn ACL in the College Bowl game and the nerve damage that accompanied that injury. And then there's Randy Gregory. It wasn't that long ago that, Jalen Smith was still wearing a brace on his foot trying to play in the NFL because he had drop foot, and he's trying to compete with these, tremendously athletic, fast players. And was exposed in some games last year. But that hasn't ever happened this year. He's been a catalyst on that defense. And then as recently as training camp, when we were visiting California for their training camp, Randy Gregory spoke for the first time since he returned, and with all kinds of admitted uncertainty about his immediate future. And for those two guys to combine on arguably the biggest play in that game, Gregory forcing the Jameis Winston fumble and Jalen Smith, scooping it up and scoring from 69 yards out, nobody closing on him. Just a remarkable sequence of events from two guys whose futures in the NFL were really questioned. I mean, I did a lot of research on the Jalen Smith situation in particular, and I can tell you there were a lot of teams that took him off the board because of that injury and their doubt about whether he would, A, ever be able to play again, B, ever be able to play at the level he was when he was healthy at Notre Dame, or C, even be an average NFL starter. And he's obviously exceeded well beyond all that. There's a lot of guys who deserve credit for that. But the thing that stands out to me on the day that he was drafted, and we all know that Dr. Cooper did the surgery, so the Cowboys had information that nobody else in the league had about the specifics of the injury. I still remember a source telling me, look, we think he's going to have a 10-year NFL career. We just don't know when it's going to start. Well, it started, and it's spectacular right now. And he and Leighton Vander Esch, the rookie that they took in the first round this year, they're going to be the best linebacking tandem in the NFC, at least for a very long time.
Yeah, and today, Ed, since you brought that up, 15 tackles for Leighton Vander Esch, and then it appears 10 tackles for Jalen Smith, including the touchdown, the fumble recovery that he returned, and then it had 2 pass breakups as well for Jalen Smith. So just a
but again, we've all seen, and this is the highlight moment of Randy Gregory's career in the NFL. He contributed to 2 of the 3 touchdowns that the Cowboys scored, setting up the one from the 4-yard line on their fumble recovery that Winston had on the exchange with the running back, and then this other one that they scored their first defensive touchdown of the year. They came into the game as one of only 4 teams without a defensive touchdown. But, we don't have to look too far for a reminder about just how momentary all of this is, because look what happened again this year with Josh Gordon just earlier in this week.
Yeah, good point. And that's why you have to stay on top of this. I think the Cowboys have really rallied around Randy Gregory. Interestingly, after the game, we were all huddled around ready to talk to Randy today, Ed, and Randy made it known I'm not talking, and then politely asked everybody to step back away from his locker. So kind of interesting, but I guess it does happen from time to time. Ed, I think this was it. I'm going to explain the setting before I throw it to this. As you know that I like to do, I did this at camp from time to time. I grabbed the defensive coordinator, Rod Marinelli. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people saw me and raced over in my direction. But as only Ed, you know how important it is to me for us to land these exclusives. I went ahead and introduced him to the Doomsday Podcast, and I think you'll find that I kind of big-bodied the rest of the crew. So without further ado, here is Doomsday's interview with Rod Marinelli, Cowboys defensive coordinator. Rod Marinelli joining the Doomsday Podcast. Rod, the way they responded after last week, were you pretty pleased? I mean, did you see that kind of performance coming?
We just talked about how do you respond, just what you said. It's the whole thing is how we respond. And I think they did a terrific job in practice all week, and they responded game day with great effort, great hitting.
What would you say about Randy Gregory's day-to-day?
Oh, I thought he had a terrific game. I mean, he's impact. Those two ends together, they're impact guys, both of them. And missed Ty a little bit inside because he could have had some wins in there, but they did a good job.
Saw Charlton out there. Is he starting to kind of play his way back into the picture a little bit?
Working at it.
You don't want to say too much about him?
Yeah. Let's see. Watch the film first.
Okay. Yeah. When a guy like Gregory, obviously you could debate the penalty they called on him, but it seems is he snake bit or are they watching for him? Because it seems to be he's getting some of these things.
He's around the quarterback so much, and he is every down. I don't know. I didn't see the difference between D-Law sack and his penalty. So I don't know. That's their job, and that's how they see it. So got to live with it.
How concerned were you about Crawford when he went down?
Oh, very. He's not just a hell of a player, but he's our captain. I mean, he brings a lot to us every day.
Versatility and all that.
Oh, and toughness. A toughness that we really admire. So, yeah, he'll be all right. It sounds like he's going to be fine. So.
What about Woods, Ross, all of those guys? Because of y'all giving up some run yardage, they kind of got some of the blame last week. How do you feel like those guys responded? Your guy, your tackles and those guys up.
They seem to be. Once I watched the tape, I thought they played really hard. Then we rotated them good, and we had some long drives, so they got gassed a little bit. But they did a solid job in there. Solid job for us.
What did you think? Were they a little more focused? Was it just execution-wise? What was so much better that allowed y'all to impact the offense? Unlike last week.
I just thought, we responded well after we watched the tape, the corrections we made from last week, and they responded. And so much of it is a mindset, this game, especially how we play. You got to be locked in and ready to go because we're not going to trick you. We're going to out-execute you. So you got to be on the screws.
Obviously, there's work still to be done, but to win the NFC East, and you don't have time to stop and think too much about it, but having been 3-5, what do you think that says about the team, and how big is that for you guys to be able to pull that off?
I think it's special for me because it was kind of like last year toward the end, the last 4 or 5 games, we felt we could be a championship defense, so we kept working. I think we won 4 out of the last 5. And it kind of started there, that mindset, and we played really well. And then they came into this season, they believed that they're a very good defense. And one thing is believing it now is putting it on tape, and we're starting to do that.
How important is it to finish with the Giants? I mean, you guys have this thing wrapped up. There's going to be some talk about should you rest some guys, that kind of thing. What is your mindset going into that last one?
Win and improve. Win and improve.
So it's important to kind of keep the
you got to keep
it
better.
going.
In this league, you got to keep getting better. Get opportunities to play.
With everything being talked about how this is now an offensive league, how comfortable are you with the idea that this defense can take this team a long way?
Well, I believe in this defense, and I believe in hitting, and I believe in hustle.
Speaking of hitting, the Woods play, what did you see?
Did you guys see it?
Well, they put some nice replays up there. Did you see?
I didn't see it.
It looked like more of a shoulder delivered. Yeah, is that? But I guess in the real time, if they see the head jerk back.
We just got to, play smart, play by the rules, and hit.
But is there anything you can tell a guy after that? I mean, because it seems like he did the right thing.
Yeah. The best thing is once we see it on tape, and I'll get a TV copy, then we can see it a little bit better.
Okay. Then you can be more critical of the officials.
Yeah. I love you to death.
Okay. Thank you. All right, there he was, Rod Marinelli, and we had a little fun there at the end. Ed, wanted to get your take on this. Obviously, I was trying to get Rod Marinelli's take on it. A couple of interesting plays in this game. The Randy Gregory, who really seems to be a target of these officials, was called for roughing the passer. I believe they tried to call him for what has been a point of emphasis, driving the quarterback into the ground, even though again, it really looked like nothing he did was out of the ordinary and would look like the hit on a quarterback that's done for a long time. And then, of course, Xavier Woods, the X-Man, in real time, it did look like a violent hit to Humphreys with his head kind of snapping back. But as you slowed it down and took a peek at it, it looked like a very clean hit across the middle. It was called a hit on a defenseless wide receiver. Ed, what did you make of those 2 calls in this game?
Well, I believe both of the personal fouls that you described led to extended drives that ultimately led to Tampa Bay scoring touchdowns. So they were critically important calls in the game. I'm not sure either one was an actual violation. I could understand how Gregory and defensive linemen in general don't get the benefit of the doubt in a situation like that against a quarterback. So I guess I can understand how that call was made. I thought the other one on Woods was preposterous, and the explanation was even worse, that a player, he makes the catch, they say, but he's still a defenseless player. So what is the defender supposed to do? Let the player make a catch and make a football move and then begin the process of tackling him? I mean, if that's the rule and that's the way it's going to be enforced, then I don't think that's football. And that needs to be changed because it's as many rules as there are that are unfair to the defense. That seems to be the one that strikes me as the most one-sided in the game. I mean, I think there's, we've seen these huge passing numbers. Now they've backed off a little bit, but this is going to be a historic scoring season. The quarterbacks are protected in a way that they've never been protected before in the pocket. And then at the other end of the pass, you've got receivers who have no fear of going into the middle of the field anymore because they're not allowed to be hit like Xavier Woods hit Humphreys in that situation. And I don't think I understand the priority being on protecting the players and, health and safety, but you also have to protect the integrity of the game, and that call did not protect the integrity of the game.
No, it didn't seem like it did at all, and you're right. That ended up being really Tampa Bay's such a bad team. They needed all sorts of penalties, and I mean, think about it. They were 3rd and 4 at one point, and the Cowboys lined up. Cowboys must lead the world in those infractions on lining. Lining up in the neutral zone and that kind of thing. I think that was Ross that got called on that one. But Cowboys defense overall does a pretty nice job. Although Jameis ends up putting up some pretty big yardage. It's not like the Buccaneers just raced up and down the field on the Cowboys.
They did come into the game statistically as one of the best passing offenses in the league. Although a lot of that I think was due to Fitzmagic in the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah.
I think the Cowboys played overall. The defense won the game. And I think we knew coming into this season that the offense was going to be challenged and that there were going to be occasions where the defense was actually going to have to win the game. And they stood up to that challenge today. And I think it's also worth noting that Tyrone Crawford was injured early in the game with what seemed to be a head neck type injury, but left on a backboard and taken to a hospital, but had control and movement of his hands. And the initial diagnosis and testing seems to have produced favorable results, and he was able to go home. And we'll see about whether he plays in Week 17 like we do some other guys.
Yeah, and you notice right after that, it's always kind of interesting to see how teams are going to respond. I mean, it looked like Jalen Smith was really in distress after that, and players were obviously his teammates and brothers there were very distraught, and for good reason. When you see someone strapped down and carried off, it sort of brings everything back to life. Did you notice Tampa Bay immediately went downfield? I believe that was to Mike Evans for about a 38-yard play, and but it did seem like
Byron Jones.
Yeah, he beat Byron Jones on the play. It seemed like holding them to that early field goal, though, was a good result for the Cowboys. And then, and by the way, the kicker for the Cowboys, Ed, if you can just keep this guy, with 50-yard plus attempts, this is a very good kicker.
Agreed. And he doesn't have to kick a lot of extra points, so he should not suffer from fatigue.
Now, Ed, this is this red zone thing has been a very big topic with the Cowboys, and I noticed you were active on Twitter today, which you always are, but it seemed like you were a little bit defending Scott Linehan from the standpoint of, hey, you got to execute some of these plays down here for it to work. Now, they fortunately were able to score on the throw to Gallup, on that kind of fade or the back shoulder throw. People were very questioning. They were questioning to Noah there, the fade.
Noah Brown.
No, folks did not like the Noah Brown fade, but we did see, Ed, in this one, Dak hold on to the ball. It's a very interesting thing that this team really seems to feed off Dak keeping the ball and running it, yet they seem to be sort of reluctant to do it. I thought that was interesting. I don't know, I'm sure you saw the quotes from Dak this week. Dak basically said, hey, even if it's not called, maybe I need to just dial my own number. And he seemed to really recoil when he found out, that he some of the run numbers and the fact that he didn't run it all in that last game. And so it was very interesting. And so he seemed to suggest, hey, I need to just call my own number if I have to.
Well, he came out of the game last week, and to me it was not a coincidence that he didn't have a rushing temp for the first time this season, and only the third time since he became the Cowboys starting quarterback he went without a single rushing attempt. And you're right, he did recognize it after that game, saying something like, I almost felt too good physically after that game. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't impose myself or exert myself, and I didn't take the kind of punishment I should take in a typical NFL game because I didn't run the ball. And so they did emphasize that. It seemed he had a number of runs in the game today, especially early on in the red zone, and he was able to run a read option play and score fairly easily. And yeah, obviously the red zone issue remains. They scored, 2 times in 3 red zone opportunities this time, but they're playing against the worst team in football in terms of defending that part of the field. The Bucs gave up nearly 70% red zone touchdowns. They're the worst defense in the league in that regard. And as to, Scott Linehan, I think that he's too often criticized for his play calling when it doesn't work, even if it's give it to Zeke, which seems to make sense to everyone. But then when he doesn't give it to Zeke and he does something creative, he gets criticized for not giving it to Zeke and for trying something stupid, like the reverse play
to Cooper
today to Mari Cooper that didn't work. Fine. So either I think he has created some unique plays that should have gotten them touchdowns. That obviously was not one because the rookie tight end, Schultz didn't block anybody at all, and JPP made the play. But we know Beasley dropped the walk-in touchdown. The fullback last week dropped the walk-in touchdown. So it's not all on the coaching. As important as the play call is the execution of the play by the guys on the field, and that hasn't always been clean either.
Specifically, Ed, and I'm glad you were talking about that during the game and both throughout the week. And I did kind of get a kick out of it. I don't know if you, and I'm sure it was in other publications as well, but I happened to be reading the morning news today before the game, and it was noted that the staff stayed up very late Wednesday night talking about the red zone. So perhaps
and ran 3 or 4 extra plays in practice on Friday when that period is emphasized. And despite all of that, Beasley got tackled short, and the Cowboys had to kick a field goal. That was the first time this season that Tampa Bay had stopped an opponent in a goal-to-go situation all year. And so despite the emphasis they put on it, the Cowboys still became a bad part of Tampa Bay's defensive history today.
That's right. They may spur the Bucs on to great things. Maybe they can build on that, forcing that one field goal attempt. Okay, on this very subject is what I started my questioning of Jerry Jones with, is asking Jerry what he thought about Dak running that ball in on that particular red zone carry.
Did you like the way Dak ran it in there? Obviously, you guys seem to feed off that, but that worked out in the red zone.
Well, I like for him to establish one of his strengths, which he's an outstanding runner and he's very physical. I like for him to do that. That hasn't not been in his playbook. He's had those options, and so sometimes it just works that way. I know we would have liked to got Cooper the ball more. Had some plays to Gallup that we've been getting. And we sit down and analyze. We say we need to get the ball more to Gallup too, as well as Cooper. So he made a couple of outstanding catch he made early, big time.
Where is your NFC East championship cap?
I've got them boxed up, and it still hadn't gotten back from Indianapolis. I had them all up there. And, as you know, this shipping nowadays can get rough on this Christmas deal. Mine are still coming back from Indianapolis.
What was the scene like in the locker room after the game? Can you just talk about the scene in the locker room?
You could joy, appreciation, young. It felt like Christmas Eve. And these guys are excited. They should be excited. This NFL is tough. It's hard to win these divisions, and I'm not at all going to take any type of step back because we don't have 11 full record. I'm not going to do that at all because this team, we got there our way. We ended up on top. That's where we wanted to be. We're in pretty good shape health-wise as we go to play the Giants and then on into the playoffs. I like where we are. I would take this when we started the season.
Everybody, you're planning to win next week.
We're playing to win, absolutely.
Okay, no resting Zeke or nobody?
We're all out. We want to go into, we've got work to do.
At least the first couple of quarters of the game?
We've got some work to do out here. I think we'd all agree that we don't want to, if we can, go into the playoffs with some of the dangling participles that we've got out here.
You wouldn't have any of those. Would 10 wins mean anything special, getting to 10?
Of course it does, yes. And it means more than 9.
There you go, Matt.
He's a mathematician right there.
Exactly. Math's my subject.
That's why you came.
There he was, Jerry Jones, having a little fun. And Ed, I knew you would like that. I wanted to make sure you got to hear that about Jerry saying that he had left his caps boxed up in Indianapolis and had trouble getting those sent to Dallas because the high cost of the Christmas season, getting those boxes sent from Indy. So Jerry is we've talked about this before. You've covered him for a long time. He was really down. You remember that Titans game? Cowboys fall to 3-5. At that point, Ed, on the Doomsday Podcast, most of our conversations, we thought the rest of the season would be about the new coach and the new staff and when would it happen. And now they sit here and the conversation becomes, what should they do? Should they rest players against the Giants in the final game? And as you might anticipate, Ed, Jerry Jones feeling very, very good about this turnaround. And quite honestly, in all the years we've covered these teams, they've had some turnarounds, but nothing quite like this.
Yeah, and I think the argument that people will make about the Cowboys, should go ahead and play their regular starters, even if they can't improve their playoff situation, will revolve around their offense and the fact that, hey, these guys need to get their problems worked out. And I would argue if they haven't worked them out by now, it's not going to happen. And, kind of to that point, only the Ravens with a rookie starting quarterback and Lamar Jackson failed to score at least 34 points on this defense this year. They've given up 40 points or more 3 times on the road to the Saints, the Bears, and the Panthers. So I don't think the Cowboys should feel great about where they are on offense. At the same time, I think it would be completely stupid and irresponsible if they were to play Zach Martin, Dak Prescott, and Ezekiel Elliott at all against the Giants next week. I mean, Jason Garrett is an inherently conservative guy, and if he's coaching for his job, as it seems, he doesn't have to win Week 17. He has to win in the postseason. As we heard Jerry suggest last week when he said the Cowboys under this coach have not had the playoff success that should be expected. So considering all of that, I just can't imagine that, knowing that Cooper Rush hasn't played this year, that they would risk Dak Prescott, and you certainly can't justify risking Zeke Elliott given his invaluable contribution. And, they prioritize health over preparedness at the end of the preseason. I would expect the same now. Elliott has a career-high 381 touches, the most in the league, leads the NFL in rushing yards from scrimmage. So resolve your offensive issues on the practice field. Don't add to it an injury to a player you can't win without.
Although the other side of that, Ed, is I can recall a couple times, one in particular, when the Giants didn't have to play anybody, but they played that last game of the regular season and almost beat the Patriots when the Patriots were undefeated that season. And they really pointed back at that game as a launching point for their success in the playoffs, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. So I don't know. Jerry today, as you heard, was pretty defiant. Hey, we got to go win, and 10 wins is important, and all that. But where I agree with you, Ed, is as this conversation continues to play out over the week, it'll be hard to convince themselves, hey, Zeke needs more carries or Zeke needs to be out there because the man has taken some punishment and he's had to miss some practice this season. And there are some guys. I mean, think about this. They are now at a point. It used to be they never won without Sean Lee. Now they never lose without him. And
he's missed 9 games. They chose not to play him today. I'm not sure still that his health is not a question in their minds as far as being fully recovered from that hamstring. I think that may have played more into their thought process than they've admitted to or people realize. But it really speaks to Van Der Esch and his progress and the trust that he's earned, that they're willing to sit Sean Lee down for the 9th time this season and feel pretty good about their prospects of winning against a team like Tampa Bay.
Ed, when you're watching the game on TV, can you ever hear through the sound? Can you hear the Van Der Esch wolf howl?
I didn't hear it all today. No.
You didn't. I was there.
Today?
Yeah, today was the first day I really heard it.
They never showed him on the telecast doing it.
Okay. Well, they played it at one point, maybe after he was on the hands team and was able to get that offsides, on the onside kick.
Okay, maybe.
But, I mean, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I mean, it was a loud – this was a meaningful wolf howl. And, I'm still upset with him, the way he kills wolves and murders those beautiful animals. But it is one of the better celebrations in football. I mean, it's nice how he does it. Now, I loved how who beat him last week, the Colts. I love how that Darius Leonard. Yeah, I like
did it to mock him, and wait till PETA finds out about it. Wait till PETA sees those pictures of him holding up a wolf with another one dead and draped around his neck. We'll see what happens then.
Yeah, if more of the country sees some of those, I think he's going to have some issues. And if I were him, I'd leave some of those wolf pelts at home because, boy, the PETA folks, they'll throw some blood on you. They'll ruin a pelt if you don't watch it. It is the Doomsday Podcast, Ed Werder. And, Ed, you know what time it is. And we couldn't help but think of this guy when the Bucks had a couple of nice returns early in the game. It is time for us to do the honor of That's a Stretch with former Cowboys scout and coach Glenn Stretch Smith, providing his grades on every aspect of this team. As we get ready to start running through this, it's rare for Stretch to kind of get after Scott Linehan and the play calling. You heard Ed, though, earlier in the podcast mention that basically the Tampa Bay, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, I think you said Tampa Bay had not stopped anybody in a goal-to-goal situation the entire year, and oh my goodness, they get it done today. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers find a way. Stretch, as we start getting ready to roll through the offense and defense and all the aspects of this thing, and you give out your grades, what has given you pause from a play-calling standpoint?
Well, I just don't think that they rely on really what their identity is. And their identity, since Hudson Houck has come here and since I think they've tried to get more physical up front, their identity has been to kind of knock guys around. I mean, knock guys off the football. And yeah, you got to take correct angles. You got to be able to do those kind of things. But it's almost like they get in the red zone, and I mean he's like a hitter that is in a funk, or a golfer that has got the yips. I mean he can't knock in a 4-foot putt to save his life. And I just today. And this goes back 3 or 4 games because, being a coach, I understand, hey, when it looks good, it's great. When it doesn't look good, it's not great. But it continues to have this feel when he gets inside the 10-yard line. And, yeah, the field gets condensed, and I get it, man. There's tight windows and all those things that go with red zone and really, specifically goal-to-go situations. But, I mean, he is in a funk. And to run a reverse where you saw Schultz outside release and just let JPP go up the field. I mean, I don't think Schultz busted that because usually when a kid busts, he'll kind of give an initial reaction like he wants to go at him, and then he won't go at him. I mean, he arc released to go get the safety, and JPP makes a play for a 7-yard loss, and it's just it's one of those things where, to me, he's in a funk, and it is. I mean, it's a 4-foot putt, and he couldn't knock it in the ocean if he was standing on the beach. I mean, that's how bad it feels right now.
Yep.
So I think one thing I wanted to say there, Stretch, is that it was pointed out in the Dallas Morning News today, a real critical breakdown of these situations, and I think everybody recognizes the greatness of Ezekiel Elliott. Everybody thinks, hey, just give him the ball, however many times it takes to get to the end zone. But the reality is that they'd run 29 red zone run plays for a total of 10 yards, factoring in penalties. And so of their 11 previous red zone chances, they settled for a field goal 4 times and failed to score any points 5 times, and then scored 2 touchdowns the other 2 times. So they're 2 for 11. So I guess I would argue that maybe trying to be creative there was done out of necessity.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that, obviously we could stand up and we could point to, they don't have Swain, so do they really have a balanced offensive line? And I'm saying if you were to put Jarwin on one side, you got Swain on the other, or Gathers, who is not as good a blocker. Does that mean they go to the backside every time? I mean, we could sit here and probably banter personnel-wise what they have, like you were saying. I guess I'm more from the school of you when you're in that situation, you go get a hat on a hat, and you ought to be able to get 2.5 and 3 yards regardless of what's going on. And I understand the challenges from a personnel standpoint. I think that's why you're starting to see Lanahan has tried to get Noah Brown involved to do some things from a physical standpoint to be able to block. Today he brought Hearns in, and Hearns gets called for the block in the back when it bounces outside. I guess my whole concern again is a play caller can get in a great rhythm and he can carry it through, or you can get in a funk. And I think right now I'm just stating what I see. It looks like they are in a funk, and that's the only way I know how to put that. I know how difficult it is, and I know that maybe they're saving some things for the postseason. There's a lot of jockey in there, and a lot of ways to cut that. Obviously, when I'm not pertinent to the call sheet and I don't know exactly what the call is, it's hard to be critical and do those kind of things.
Yeah.
But I do think that he is not able to get in a rhythm right now, and he's not in a rhythm. And then when you start pressing, then to me it even looks, it even tends to look worse.
I'm with you, although I don't knock him too hard because he tried to throw it to your guy. I mean, nobody has been more in love with young Noah Brown, the youngster out of Ohio State. So let's not beat Linehan up too much. Okay, Stretch, let's start running through this a little bit, and let's start where we've been talking about on the offensive side of the ball. Quarterback Dak Prescott, 20 for 25. I mean, the man is accurate. He's an accurate passer. At least he was today. 161 yards. Now, Ed will always throw this stat at you. Ed kind of called me out because I was off by a number earlier, but this makes it for Dak 24 and 21.
24 and 1. 24 and 1.
Oh,
the last 3
yes.
seasons when he does have an interception.
Ed has
or a fumble.
corrected me again. Yes. No.
You were going to say 24 for 21.
I was obscenely wrong. Yes, 24 and 1. You were correct. But what did you make of the quarterback play? What kind of grade would you give Dak Prescott?
Well, I think that he, I'm going to say that he feels a little of that pressure. Today I saw him dump the ball down when the dig is wide open. I saw him again hold on to the football in the red zone. If it's not there, throw it away. I don't see, guys, I'm telling you, I don't see where I was very, I gave him a lot of praise early in the year and through the middle of the year, especially through that 5-game win streak, where he was doing some things and making some checks at the line of scrimmage. Now I think that's starting to trickle down a little bit. I mean, I think he's in somewhat of a funk. That RPO they ran today should have been a pick 6 going the other way. I'm out on the RPO situation. I don't like that. I don't think that fits this offense. I don't like the look at all. So at best, I mean, he had a very average day. Now, I am glad that he didn't turn the football over, and that's if you want to say that's a step in the right direction, but I continue, the thing that concerns me most is I almost feel like he's not being coached in the individual time. I'm not at practice.
No, this is a Kellen Moore. This is a Kellen Moore criticism. Go ahead.
No, I don't give a whiskey crap who the quarterback is. I'm telling you that it doesn't look like when you watch the game and when you put the film on, it doesn't look like the strides are being made. And everybody knows, I've got a personal relationship with Wade Wilson. I'm not going to hold any of that back. I'm going to tell you that if you just look at it and you're honest about the strides that need to be made, I don't see that being made. And I do think that somebody has to draw that to the forefront. You got a play caller who looks like he's in a funk, and you got a quarterback who's holding the football in those situations. And again, that creates an uneasiness across your offensive, your offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and
to your point, Stretch, and before we get you to commit to a grade, to your point, in the red zone, there was that one play where Dak tried to escape out the back of the pocket, which is a really bad idea in the NFL and something you only see the most inexperienced quarterbacks do. And Vita Vea sacked him, but inadvertently grabbed the face mask, so it didn't count as a sack when it could have. But at least he did have the running element again today down in the red zone, and that paid off. So what's your grade?
They did right. I'm giving him a C-. And it's barely above a D, fellas. I mean, I'm concerned about the direction of the quarterback. I really am. I'm really concerned, and this is something we can talk about at the end of the segment. But I mean, I'd like to ask you guys. I mean, does he need to play Sunday against the Giants? I mean, that's a question I think needs to be brought to the forefront here, because I don't see where I saw the arrow going up on this young man in that 5-game winning streak. I see it flat and turned a little bit down right now. And that's a real concern to me.
Ooh, and Stretch certainly seems like you think he should play. I know what Ed thinks. We'll weigh in on that as we here in a little bit. I do want to get your take on the running back, though. What kind of grade you give Zeke today?
I mean, I still see Zeke running the football hard. I mean, he plays kind of, he's what you want from a running back. I mean, he gets 2 yards when there's nothing there. He always falls forward. I mean, a foot on the football today, and he fumbled that ball that Schultz was able to get on down there. That doesn't concern me a lot, because I don't think he's a big fumble guy. I think he gave you a workmanlike effort today, and I'm going to give him a B for the job that he did. And then, Rod Smith had a few plays in there, and Rod does some things on special teams that I think help you. So I'll put those two guys together and give them a B.
Okay, let's look at the offensive line, and what did you what kind of grade would you give those guys?
Offensive line, again, when you're running, really your base offense, and again, I thought Tampa did a nice job up front with Vita Vea. I can't get his name right to save my life.
You're okay.
They played better. I'm saying Tampa's pretty good, where you say, boy, they've been giving up big runs. I think since Duffner has taken the defense over from Smith, I think they've cleaned some things up, and I thought that Zach, trying to come back in and getting the fold a little bit. I mean, I just thought you got a very average effort out of your offensive line today. I didn't see anything that would really wow me. I didn't see anybody really knocking guys off the ball. I did see the holding. One of the holding penalties on Tyron was kind of a ticky-tack call, because it was when they ran that power, and Zeke had a big run there. And, I mean, really, it's almost like they're looking to call holding on him every stinking snap, and that bothers me. But, I think Tyron is obviously a great foot athlete, and he needs to get back into playing the way he can play, and I think he's probably still having, some injury issues, So, again, we got the question of, would you hold some of these veteran guys out? But I thought today was just an average, at best, average day for the offensive line, and I'm giving them a C.
Okay, C, an average day for the offensive line. This wide receiver core, Jerry was not pleased, Coach Jones, after the game with how many targets Amari Cooper had. He had 4 catches for, I think, about 20 yards today. Beasley had the one. It's really interesting how this team, they don't seem to always stay with a guy throughout the game. They'll kind of go through one part of the game where they really emphasize a player, and that one drive was Beasley's drive. What did you make of the receiving core, Stretch?
Yeah, I see, and I see Gallup doing some good things. I mean, I think this is obviously. I think the addition, we've said it a million times, of Cooper has loosened some things up for this receiving core. But I do like that. Gallup, it looks like he is getting better every week, and so where I kind of try to give those guys an arrow, even though I'm giving them a grade, I try to, I don't think you ever stay the same. I think you either getting better or you're not getting better. And right now, Gallup, to me, is getting better. He's understanding where he's at on the field. I mean, I love how they ran that wheel route to him, hit him in the hole shot throw, and I thought that group got a B.
All right, a B for the wide receivers, and then Jarwin in the gang, Jarwin, Schultz, the great Rico. What did you make of that tight ends group?
Again, about like the offensive line. I mean, just kind of gave you a workmanlike effort, and I didn't really see anything that that kind of lit me up, and I didn't. I do think that it concerns me a little bit that they're not still where they need to be from a strength at the point of the line of scrimmage, and so that bothers me. And I'm going to give that group. I'm going to kind of group them in there with the offensive line a C, just an average day.
All right, let's flip over the defensive side of the ball. And Tampa, obviously, a pretty good passing team. They put up good numbers this season. Let's start with the back of this defense. Let's start with the secondary. And obviously, Byron Jones got beat early on that throw to Mike Evans. But what did you think of the overall play of the secondary?
Yeah, he got beat multiple times. I think this is the first game that I've really seen an offense go at him, and they went at him a little bit today. This is a player that I think he's done an okay job all year long. And I'm going to say okay. He's done better than that. But what concerns me is no interceptions, 0 interceptions for him. And so I'm back to kind of that. Boy, he needs to start getting his hands on some footballs. Today, Wouzier had a nice breakup, and he did an okay job. Got beat one time on an open field tackle. That can happen. I like the safeties, guys. I think Xavier Woods is really starting to come into his own. And when I think about guys that, again, their arrow is set it up, and I grade this group to a very, what I feel like was an okay effort, but they did get their hands on some footballs. And I thought the penalty on Woods was a terrible call down there. I mean, I think he's, I think he'll hit you. I don't think he's a dirty player. I think he's a sound player. But it does concern me that this group went at Byron Jones today and really, had some success going at him. But I'm going to give that group a B- and just an okay day.
Okay, linebackers, Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith combined for, I believe, it was like 25 tackles. Pretty big day for both of them. What did you make of the linebackers, in particular, the Wolf Killer?
Yeah, those two guys fly around. I mean, they really do. I mean, I see so many things that are just good, and as you're looking at the game, you're grading the game, I mean, you find yourself, writing his name all the time, plus Van Der Esch, plus Jalen Smith. I mean, and then you want to go back and you say, okay, did I ever see any minuses in these situations? And again, I'm not privy to call sheets, but I see those guys really, really coming together as a group. They play well as a group. I mean, you see them communicate today. I think the in and out coverage, the things that they do are conducive of really smart football players. They're young guys that are obviously always looking to get on the ball. I thought Jalen Smith came up and broke up a pass today to the tight end, and then obviously picked up the football, went scored with it. this group has got the arrow going up, and definitely a B+ for the linebackers.
B+ for the linebackers, and anxious to see if there's any A's given out today. Could it be the defensive line on a back, kind of a team that was bouncing back from a really awful performance against the Colts? What'd you give that grade? Unit?
Well, I saw Taco do some things today. I mean, I like that they're kind of pressing him into action. I thought it was a really, I thought the call on Gregory for roughing was a really poor call. I mean, I really like Randy Gregory. I mean, I see his arrow going up. Obviously, Lawrence, we know where he is. I'm a little concerned. I hope that Crawford is not going to have to be out, because he brings you that ability to move guys inside and outside and create some matchups. But again, today, when you look at the group, how they played, Woods, Collins inside, Ross, I really did. I thought it was kind of a bring your lunchbox and bring your hard hat, and that's kind of what they did. They went out and won the football game, and just a B-. I didn't see anything that just stood out to say, wow, that was awesome. I'm a little concerned with the timing of how they run their stunts, because sometimes they get pushed hard down in there or pushed hard outside, and then that allowed Jameis to kind of jump up in there and make some runs, kind of give him some alleys to throw the ball. I liked what they did, when they played New Orleans, where they're getting that steady push up inside, but they didn't get that today, and just gave you a workmanlike effort, and I'm going to give them a B-.
All right, and let's finish it up with special teams. You have nobody that covers this team has been as critical of this unit as you have, and they gave up a couple of returns today. But they were able to get the missed field goal, and I'm going to credit Rico Gathers and his presence for causing that.
You are. What did he do? Maybe I missed something. What did he do?
Anytime he's on the field, Matt gives him credit for something.
I got you.
Getting credit for still being in a uniform.
Yeah, I guess Matt throws the bear claw up over there in the press box. You know what? I didn't see anything out of the special teams. I mean, Beasley had an okay return. It got him some decent field position in there, but they gave up. They gave up two big returns. They brought the ball out one time from 3 yards deep and got it to the 16, and he got drilled. The special teams, other than the fact that the punter and the kicker, feels like they're in a little bit of a groove. Other than those two guys, I mean, that group is almost average. It's just a bowl of grits. That's how it feels like they are. They're just, and then there's days when they're not very good, and they do something that's just glaring in the game. But I don't see anything out of this group, and that's the concerning part. I mean, we can go through all year long and through a 15-game season when you don't see anything that kind of gets you shot in the ass. I'm not sure what you. I'm sorry. I was going to go through this whole segment and not swear. Anyway, when you don't see anything that gets you excited, that's a concern for me. And again, anytime it's a flat needle, anytime it's just flat. I mean, no arrow up, no arrow, just flat, and it's flat for 15 games. I mean, at some point you just say, you know what, this bunch is just they're just kind of going through the motions, and I feel like that's kind of what goes on. I mean, I don't see Keith O'Quinn. I mean, I go back to the days of Joe Avisano. I mean, he'd headbutt somebody. I mean, if they didn't get it right. So I kind of miss those days a little bit.
Oh, Coach Joe, man, what a great guy and coach he was, and also big into country music. Stretch, just want to wish you a Merry Christmas and to you and your family, and we appreciate you for being a part of the Doomsday family. Ed, is there anything you want to say? Do you have any kind words for Stretch as we kind of say goodnight to him?
Outstanding job as always, and it's a good New Year's resolution for you to finally do a no profanity segment in 2019.
I tell you what, I'm gonna go to work on it. I'm gonna press my middle finger into my thumb and hum a little bit and see if I can get it right. I almost made it there, and I got to the very end, and I'm just too old to say bottom, bobo, but so it slips. But my apologies.
Maybe we should just eliminate. we should eliminate special teams. That seems what gets you most riled up.
It's not a bad idea. I kind of like it. I'll go with that. While you're hot, let's buy 2 of them. I like it. Hey, Merry Christmas, fellas. Appreciate you having me on.
Same to you. Thanks, Stretch.
All right, guys. All right.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith, and doing a nice job for us as always. We have some final thoughts on this Doomsday podcast. I did want to say, Ed, and boy, always thanks to Lowe's for what they've brought to our podcast. But boy, our partners at Hodges Capital, they've been remarkable for over 30 years. Hodges Capital has had one primary focus, and that's focusing on U.S. stocks. The 10-person investment team combs the investment landscape and handpicks selected, undervalued, and underfollowed companies. If you're looking for someone to make your investment assets grow, consider Hodges Capital Management and Hodges Fund. Here's how you find them. It's hodgescapital.com or hodgesfunds.com. That's the brother combination of Craig and Clark Hodges, both Baylor guys, Ed, I should add, and they do a tremendous job over there, and even at a time when the market has tanked recently. I don't know if you saw that, Ed. We had a really rough day in the markets.
I've been paying close attention to it. I might need my funds soon, and they're diminishing rapidly.
Yeah. Well, Hodges always find them that they don't allow you to tank when the rest of the country is tanking. Thank you to Hodges Capital for being a big part of what we do at the Doomsday Podcast. Ed, as we conclude this holiday edition, Cowboys with a 27-20 win over Tampa Bay. They are officially in the playoffs. And a couple of things to wrap up. One thing, Ed, is we've got to talk about how are the Cowboys going to approach? Now, I had visits with both, and you heard from Jerry Jones and Rod Marinelli. They seemed to – it was kind of that John Wayne machismo after the game. Hey, we're going to play. We need to win. Let's go play. Now, you know how that goes, Ed. That sounds kind of good early in the week, and then as you get there in what will be a so-called meaningless game in terms of their playoff positioning or hopes, well, I mean, what do you end up doing? What do you think is the safest way? I've seen it work for teams that keep the throttle down and keep playing. I've seen it work better for teams that go ahead and rest some players. Ed, where do you think this thing's headed?
Well, it is now official that Chicago did beat the 49ers, so that locks the Cowboys in as the 4th seed. So, to me, they have nothing of consequence to gain by risking their significant starting players against the Giants. So my feeling is Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, Zach Martin coming back from an injured knee, maybe even Tyron Smith. I think his recent penalty issues would suggest he's far from 100%. He's had 10 penalties this season, 7 holding calls, and 5 of those in the last 3 games. So I would suggest resting all of the irreplaceable guys. DeMarcus Lawrence would be another guy that I would take out of the lineup. I might have to look at Jalen Smith, giving him a week off. Let Van Der Esch play his spot and let Sean Lee play the other spot. I just think emotionally, by the time they get to the game, they're going to realize there's really nothing to be won on that field at Giants Stadium, and too much to risk. And for all of those reasons, I think eventually the Cowboys hierarchy, which has invested so much in this upcoming playoff run, will see the value in protecting these key players and not risk the playoffs for the sake of a meaningless Week 17 game. I mean, you go out and you trade a first-round pick for Amari Cooper because you think you can win the division, and you win the division. You make coaching staff changes and bring in, Hudson Houck, and you elevate Mark Colombo, and you start being more physical up front, and you're getting all of the desired results. I would suggest they don't ruin it now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I brought that point up with you. We've seen the Giants have some success with continuing to play, but it's not. They were playing a great team in Week 16. The Cowboys are not. They're playing a team in the Giants that
and they were trying to beat a historic team. I mean, the Patriots were going for a perfect regular season. The Giants aren't. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Giants are trying to get to 6 wins or 5 wins, whatever it is. That's a bad team. Ed, you're always so good at sort of putting things in perspective in terms of the playoff outlook. Everybody's kind of getting excited and looking past and thinking about, okay, who's coming in here for the first game, the wild card weekend, and then where will it go from there, and where could the Cowboys end up? And how is it as we kind of look at it this evening? We were certainly watching what the Eagles were going to do in that game, and that was a back-and-forth game. We now know the result of that. How does this thing look like it's going to end up playing out?
Well, right now, it looks like the Cowboys would host the Seattle Seahawks on the opening weekend of the playoffs, and that's a team that obviously is a lot like they are. They build their offense around a running game. They play great defense, and then ask the quarterback to make few plays. Now, this is an experienced Super Bowl winning quarterback who has more big play potential and is a better, more accurate thrower than Dak Prescott. But two similar teams. Seattle obviously won at Jerry World by 11 points earlier in the year. As for the rest of the playoff field, among the teams that have clinched berths, the Cowboys are 1-2. They lost to Seattle. They lost to the Texans. They beat the Saints. And then there are a couple of fringe teams that could get in. They lost to the Colts. They lost to the Titans. And then the Eagles still have a potential of making it, and the Cowboys beat them twice. So kind of a mixed review on how they've handled playoff teams this year. Obviously, the biggest win is against the Saints, and the Saints haven't fully recovered from the damage in that yet.
Yeah, and just one quick correction there, light correction. That game that Cowboys lost to Seattle was in Seattle.
Really?
Just for the record. Yeah. They lost.
I thought it was at Jerry World.
They lost that game to the Titans, and at home, and I think that was perhaps maybe their only home loss of the season. Ed, I do want to finish with an important note. You have detailed in a very excellent fashion how some of these numbers that sort of reflect what the Cowboys do when they're able to hold onto the ball and not turn it over, and especially as it pertains to this quarterback. Can you kind of walk us through that and what today's result sort of backed up as far as what we've seen from Dak over the last 3 years?
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, in his 3 years as a starter, they're now 21-1 when he does not have a turnover at the quarterback position. Beyond that, the Cowboys have actually, and this is quite an amazing stat and quite a testimony to how well they're capable of executing and the priority they put on protecting the football. They've had 7 games this year, today being the 7th one, in which they have not committed a single turnover. They have won all 7 of those games. So the odds would tell you, and history would suggest, that if the Cowboys don't turn the football over, they're going to win the game. I also did a little bit of studying, and I can tell you that some of the issues that we've talked about with the red zone, obviously the big personnel changes that they faced of great consequence this season were the retirement of Jason Witten and the release of Dez Bryant. So I wanted to know, given the problems they're having in the red zone, how big a part of their red zone success were Witten and Dez Bryant, and here it is. Here's the results. I'm going to finish with this.
Okay.
4 of Jason Witten's 5 touchdown catches last year were inside the red zone, although only 1 came from inside the 10, goal-to-go situation. 5 of Dez Bryant's 6 touchdowns were in the red zone, and 3 of those were from the 10 or closer. So really significant contributions from those 2 players. 9 touchdown catches in the red zone combined by Witten and Dez Bryant.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you looked that up. And in even some of these other players the Cowboys have drafted with that in mind. At one point we thought, maybe Rico Gathers could help in the red zone. Well, that's kind of gone by the wayside, as much as I like the guy because I used to love watching him play basketball at Baylor. They drafted Escobar. Let's get somebody 6'7", he'll be good in the red zone. Well, I don't even know if he's in the league anymore. He's certainly not with the Cowboys, and so that it has been an issue. And I really enjoyed on the podcast today hearing you and Stretch sort of debate that point on some of the issues and what's going on. Stretch really seems to think that this offensive coordinator is in a funk and really is just kind of in a dark place. And whether Stretch is right or not, Ed, it's just not a great thing. You never know what could happen in one game. But heading into the playoffs, it's not like a great thing that this team, if it's known for anything, hopefully it's dominant defense. That's the nicest thing you could say about this team. This is a dominant defense, and they back that up at times. But you could also say this team is very, very bad in the red zone. And that just, that's going to be hard to overcome. I mean, it is, and it showed up again today. And despite Ed, the Wednesday night, the late Wednesday night conversations they had about it, and the extra work they did on Friday.
Yeah, they're just not a team for a lot of reasons that consistently scores a lot of points, and they do put a lot of pressure on their defense. And the defense has done an outstanding job on a game-to-game basis of limiting opponents. In terms of how much they allow them to score and giving up big plays. They've avoided that. One of the best teams in football at that. And in this game against the Bucs, they showed some potential for creating the kind of game-turning turnovers that a struggling offense needs. So I think they're going to need to play more going forward like they did today if they're going to stay in it very long. The defense is going to have to create some short fields and score some touchdowns themselves if the Cowboys are going to go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it makes me think about a team that, and it's a lot different kind of team, but I remember the Saints, the year they won the Super Bowl, they did not have a great defense, but what they had is a defense that did score points and got takeaways. And if this team could get more in that direction, but this team, it's one defensive back it's sending to the Pro Bowl, has made it through an entire season without an interception, and
neither one of their starting corners has a pick, right?
I believe that is correct. This is sort of a safety only picks or linebackers, and so that is the case. Ed, it's been tremendous. This 2018, I can't believe we're about to say goodbye to 2018. I want to thank Frito Nation Productions and for all that Mark Frito Friedman does for us, does such a nice job, and he's always up here ready to roll, and I appreciate that. And then our partners, Lowe's has come on board with us. Of course, Hodges Capital and MyBookie has been with us in 2018. Richardson Chrysler getting ready to come on board, and it's been a fun year in Doomsday, and look forward to much more in 2019. And thank you for everything that you've done for Doomsday.
Same to you. It's been a real enjoyable thing to do every week. Talk about the Cowboys, and study their tendencies and how they're winning and why they're losing, and I look forward to doing more of it as we go forward through the playoffs.
Yeah, and keep it up. By the way, I've monitored your work, and not only are you on Twitter, but Colin Cowherd and some of these other appearances you've made, you really are carrying the Doomsday brand, and I'm serious as I could be. Today, everybody I ran into asking me about Doomsday, and these local radio folks, and God love them, I was with them for a lot of years. From what I can tell, they never go on the air without listening to Doomsday. And I just think that I thought I should add that. All right, Ed, it's been great. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Tell everybody hi in Colorado. We'll hold it down here in Texas for everyone who's been a part of this. Good night, everybody.
I'll meet you. I'll meet you at the studio in Dallas next week to talk about Cooper Rush.
I love it. I cannot wait. All right. Good night to all.
Stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.